Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're getting into a really fascinating story. It kind of sits right at the intersection of NBA courts, crypto markets, and, well, the sometimes scary side of digital security. Our mission here is pretty straightforward, but I think really important. We're doing a deep dive into what happened with Kevin Durant. The superstar athlete, he apparently had this multi-year struggle just to get access to his own Bitcoin. And we want to use his story, this really high-profile case, as a lens, a way to understand maybe the single biggest challenge facing Web3 adoption right now, this whole custody crisis.
Yeah, and it's way more than just celebrity news, right? It's a proper financial case study. We've pulled together some really useful sources for this. We're looking at reporting from places like CNBC and MarketWatch. They covered how Durant finally got back into his account recently. But we're not just stopping there. We're bringing in industry research, too, like data from Chainalysis, which actually shows the sheer scale of crypto that's just lost. And crucially, we're digging into thought leadership. People like Vitalik Buterin, Ethereum's co-founder, and his ideas about, the future of crypto recovery.
Okay, so the core story, when you boil it down, it's actually pretty simple, almost relatable in a weird way. Kitty got locked out of his Coinbase account for years.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a hack or someone stealing it. It sounds like it was just passwords, old info, maybe the sheer bureaucracy of trying to get back in.
Right, just the classic access issues, but amplified. And this long, drawn-out fight, it perfectly captures that fundamental tension in crypto, doesn't it? This constant push and pull between self-custody, holding your own keys, being your own bank.
Right, the whole not your keys, not your coins thing.
Exactly. Versus centralized custody relying on a platform, like Coinbase in this case, for the convenience, maybe the perceived security.
And the fact that he did eventually get back in, just recently.
Right.
Well, that doesn't just erase the years he couldn't touch it, does it?
Not at all. It just changes the conversation. It's not if he gets access anymore. It's what did that lack of access actually cost him? His whole experience is this huge public example. It shows that even someone with massive resources, public profile, you're still subject to the rules, the protocols of these big platforms.
The recovery process, the security checks.
Yeah. It really forces us to ask who's actually in control of these digital assets when they're on an exchange.
Okay, so loads to unpack there. But before we really dive into the celebrity angle and what this custody stuff means for you listening, we just need to take a quick moment. Doing these deep dives, connecting sports, finance, Web3, it takes a lot of research to get it right.
It really does.
And if you appreciate this kind of work, finding these connections, digging into the details, the best way to support us is just to engage with the show. Like, subscribe, maybe drop a comment. It sounds small, but it genuinely helps us out a lot. Boosts visibility, helps the algorithm find us, lets us keep making this content.
Yeah, that support means we can keep bringing these stories. We really appreciate it.
We do. Okay, so thanks for that. Now let's get back to that main tension, right? Let's dig into this. Why Kevin Durant? Why does his story matter more than, say, the countless posts you see on Reddit or whatever about locked accounts?
Well, it really comes down to the mainstream spotlight. It's that celebrity effect, right? When some anonymous person complains online about, a 2FA loop on Coinbase, it's a problem, sure, but it stays pretty niche.
Right, it's background noise for most people.
Exactly, but when it's an NBA superstar, someone recognized globally, suddenly crypto security, the problems with centralized platforms, it's not just a tech issue anymore. It becomes a major financial news story, a conversation starter. For a lot of people out there, crypto still feels abstract, complicated.
Yeah.
Katie's story, it grounds it, makes it human. Everyone gets forgetting a password, right? Everyone knows the frustration of dealing with customer service lines that go nowhere.
Yeah, but the potential scale here adds so much weight. This isn't like being locked out of your email. This could be millions, potentially. And it has that weird double-edged effect you mentioned the sources picked up on. It's a warning sign, definitely.
Yeah, warning sign.
But also kind of a direct endorsement. It's strange.
That paradox is absolutely key. Look, the lockout itself, the years of frustration, that screams risk. It tells everyone, hey, even Coinbase, this huge publicly traded company, recovery can be a nightmare. But the fact that he did get back in, eventually, after all that hassle, that sends a different signal, doesn't it? Especially to people maybe just thinking about crypto, feeling cautious.
How so?
Well, it suggests the system, even if it's incredibly frustrating, it can work for high-stakes situations. The average person considering buying Bitcoin might think, okay, it was rough for KD, but his money was safe on the platform and he got it back. Maybe these exchanges are basically okay for someone like me. It could actually boost confidence in a weird way just by showing resolution is possible.
Interesting take. But that leads right into the friction, the user experience problem. We know from just looking around, never mind the sources, that locked accounts, 2FA issues, they're constant complaints about the big exchanges.
Absolutely frequent.
So Katie's multi-year wait, it kind of validates all those smaller retail investor horror stories, doesn't it? It shows this isn't just small users falling through the cracks. There's a real deep friction point in how these platforms operate. It's like Web3 tech layered with old-school corporate red tape.
That's a great way to put it. Think about it. If you're an average Joe, you might spend hours, days, weeks battling chatbots, automated emails.
Getting nowhere fast.
Right. Now imagine you're Kevin Durant. You've got lawyers, financial advisors, probably calling high-level contacts at the exchange directly. Constant pressure.
You'd assume that would speed things up.
You would. But even with all that leverage, it still took years. That tells you something powerful about how rigid these systems are, especially the KYC Know Your Customer and the anti-money laundering rules they have to follow, legally required. They just can't bend the rules on verifying identity, not even for a superstar. It's too risky for them.
Okay, so let's talk money then. The hypothetical financial side. What was the cost of being locked out? Our sources suggest looking at Bitcoin's price history during that time. We don't know exactly when he bought or how much.
Now, those details aren't public.
But let's make a reasonable guess. Say he bought a good chunk, maybe back in the 2017 run-up or even early 2018 before things cooled off.
Okay, that's a plausible time frame. And if he was locked out from, say, late 2018 through to early 2024, think about what happened in the market then.
Massive volatility, huge swings.
Exactly. He potentially missed 2 major bull runs. Critically, he couldn't touch his Bitcoin, couldn't sell or rebalance near the big peak in November 2021. Remember that. Bitcoin hit almost $69,000.
Wow. Okay, so let's just run a hypothetical number. Say he had, I don't know, 100 Bitcoin, bought at maybe $10 average.
Okay, 100 BTC.
At 69K, that's $6.9 million. If he only got access back when the price was, say, 40K, that's $4 million. The difference, just on that hypothetical 100 BTC, that's nearly $3 million in potential gains he couldn't realize because he was locked out.
Correctly. It's the opportunity cost. The money was technically safe, yes. Coinbase didn't lose it. But the inability to access it, to make decisions during those crucial market moments, that was the real penalty of the lockout.
It shifts the focus, doesn't it? From worrying about hackers getting your coins to worrying about the platform itself preventing you from using them.
Yeah.
Liquidity risk.
It's a huge lesson. An asset's only truly valuable if you can access it, sell it, use it when you need to. If you can't touch it, its market value is just theoretical, functionally zero to you in that moment.
Which leads perfectly to that question the sources raised for the audience, for you listening. Imagine going through that, years of stress, knowing you have this potentially huge sum locked away. Then you finally get it back. It's worth, who knows, tens, maybe hundreds of millions. What do? Do you hold or do you sell immediately?
It's fascinating psychologically, isn't it? The first feeling must be immense relief. You'd want to sell something just to prove it's real, to make the wait worthwhile, take some profit.
Makes sense.
But then again, someone who bought Bitcoin years ago probably did so with strong conviction, belief in its long-term value. If KD just dumped it all the moment he got access, well, that might signal the trauma of being locked out was worse than his belief in Bitcoin itself.
But if he holds...
If he holds, it suggests his underlying faith is still there. Even after experiencing probably the worst possible user friction imaginable, his decision, whatever it was, tells us a lot about the kind of conviction you need to really be in this crypto space long term. So, KD getting his Bitcoin back eventually. It's a success story in one sense, but the years it took, that immediately pulls us right back into that core philosophical debate in Web3. It just validates that old crypto saying, the most fundamental one.
Let me guess, not your keys, not your coins.
You got it. We say it all the time, but KD's situation really makes it concrete, doesn't it? When he put his Bitcoin onto Coinbase, he was making a trade-off. He gave up direct control for convenience, maybe ease of use.
He trusted Coinbase to hold the keys for him.
Exactly. He relied on them. They were the intermediary. He didn't hold the actual keys on the blockchain. He held, essentially, an IOU from Coinbase. They controlled the mechanism to access the funds.
And while they protected it from hackers, apparently.
Right. The funds seem to have been secure from external threats. But they couldn't protect him from their own system, their internal recovery rules, their bureaucracy. His story is a massive wake-up call about custody risks. A lot of retail folks, especially newcomers, might think using Coinbase or PayPal or Robinhood for crypto is just like using a bank.
Assuming the same protections, same easy recovery. if you forget your password.
Yeah, they overestimate the similarity. They don't grasp that the security hurdles the identity verification exchanges have to enforce now, especially after things like FTX. It makes getting back in fundamentally different and often much harder than a bank just resetting your login.
That seems to be the real friction point. The convenience is why people use them.
Undeniably, without these easy on-ramps, crypto would still be incredibly niche. They serve a vital purpose for adoption.
But that convenience comes with this hidden cost. Counterparty risk. You're trusting the platform, not just their cybersecurity against hackers, but also their admin efficiency, their customer service speed, their ability to navigate their own rules.
All of it. And Katie's ordeal shows that administrative failure, the difficulty proving you are who you say you are after years, maybe with a changed phone number or email, can be just as damaging, maybe more so than an actual hack.
So what are the specific things that cause this investor education gap you mentioned? What do people miss?
Well, it's often not about understanding blockchain tech itself. It's simpler, more practical. It's about understanding you need a long-term plan for your own security details when using these platforms. You absolutely have to keep track of the exact email address you signed up with, the phone number, the documents you used for ID, like your driver's license or a utility bill.
Because of those change over the years.
Exactly. If you move countries, get a new phone, lose access to an old email, the exchange's KYC systems might flag your account, security review.
And security review in crypto often means you're locked out, period.
Yeah.
Until you jump through hoops.
Serious hoops. You might need video calls to prove it's you. Notarized documents, maybe matching biometric data from when you first signed up years ago. It can get incredibly complex.
It's not just forgot password, is it? It's proving ownership of potentially millions of dollars.
Precisely. The burden of proof has to be high to stop fraud. But that same high bar is what causes these nightmarish, multi-year lockouts like Durant apparently faced.
Okay, so if there's a silver lining to this whole mess, it's that it must be driving demand for better solutions, things that bridge that gap.
Absolutely. You see a definite uptick in interest for true self-custody. Hardware wallets, things like Ledger, Trezor, the idea of holding that physical device, having that 12 or 24-word seed phrase, it seems a lot more appealing when the alternative is potentially years of battling customer service.
Makes sense.
But interestingly, you also see the exchanges themselves responding. They're investing in their own self-custody products now, trying to offer ways for users to hold their own keys but still use the familiar exchange interface.
And this whole thing probably pushes other related areas forward too, like insurance.
For sure. There's growing momentum around specialized crypto insurance. Not just for hacks or market crashes, but specifically covering things like lost keys or recovery failures. It's an acknowledgement that maybe the biggest risk isn't the tech, but human error and institutional bottlenecks.
So ultimately, the KD story makes that trade-off crystal clear for everyone, doesn't it? Do you trust yourself completely, knowing if you mess up with self-custody, it's game over? Or do you trust a regulated but potentially slow and bureaucratic third party, knowing you might get locked out like he did?
That's the decision. It's now front and center for anyone holding crypto. What risk are you more comfortable with?
Okay, so KD got his Bitcoin back. That's the positive outcome here, eventually. But to really understand why that's significant, we need to look at the history of when things go permanently wrong in crypto.
Yeah.
Because it happens. A lot.
Yeah, and it generally falls into two camps, both pretty devastating. There's self-custody failure, where the user messes up, and there's centralized failure, where the platform you trust collapses or loses your funds.
Let's start with the classic self-custody horror story. The sources mention Stefan Thomas.
Ah, yes, Stefan Thomas and the Iron Key. It's probably the most famous, most painful example of self-custody risk. It perfectly shows the finality of being your own bank.
Remind us of the details. He had a lot of Bitcoin.
He had 7,002 Bitcoin, and the keys were stored on this specific type of hardware wallet, an Iron Key. These things are designed for extreme security. The crucial feature: after 10 wrong password attempts, the device either wipes itself or permanently encrypts the data. Gone forever.
10 strikes and you're out.
Exactly. And Thomas, he'd written the password down but lost the paper. By the time he found the Iron Key again years later and started trying passwords, he realized he'd already used 8 attempts.
Oh, wow. So he had 2 guesses left.
2 guesses to unlock what was by then worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Imagine the stress. His situation is the ultimate example of self-inflicted loss. Human error, forgetting, losing the note, meeting unforgiving cryptography. Those coins are just gone. No recovery possible.
And that's the stark contrast with KD, right? Thomas had no one to call, no customer service, no legal team could help. The math just wouldn't let him in.
Precisely. In pure self-custody, if you lose the key, that's it. There's no backstop. Those coins are effectively burned, removed from circulation forever.
Okay, so that's the risk if you hold your own keys.
Yeah.
What about the other side? Trusting an exchange. KD eventually got his back from Coinbase, but that's not always the case.
No, definitely not. And the prime example of centralized risk, of ultimate counterparty failure, is the collapse of QuadrigaCX.
The Canadian exchange, right? What happened there?
QuadrigaCX was pretty big at the time, but it turned out its operations, especially the security of the customer funds, relied almost entirely on one person, the founder, Gerald Cotton. When Cotton died suddenly, unexpectedly, while traveling in India, the whole thing imploded.
Why? Didn't they have backups?
Hmm.
Other people with access?
Apparently not, or not sufficient access. The sources indicate Cotton had sole control over the private keys for the exchange's cold wallets, the secure, offline storage where they held the vast majority of user funds, hundreds of millions of dollars worth.
So the keys, the passwords, died with him.
That's the allegation, yes. The users had put their trust in the centralized company, QuadrigaCX, but the company itself had failed at the most basic level of internal controls. Key management, redundancy, succession planning. It wasn't a tech failure like a bug. It was a human governance failure at the center.
And unlike KD with Coinbase, where the company still exists and has processes, however slow.
The QuadrigaCX users were just stuck. The custodian effectively vanished, taking the keys with him, a total unrecoverable loss for them.
So you have Thomas representing the finality of messing up self-custody.
Right.
And QuadrigaCX representing the risk that the central party you trust just disappears or fails catastrophically.
Exactly. Those two poles perfectly frame the custody dilemma. And when you look at the data on how much crypto might be lost this way, the numbers are kind of staggering.
That's where the Chainalysis research comes in. How do they even estimate that?
Yeah, Chainalysis and others try to quantify it. It's tricky, obviously, but they look at blockchain activity, or rather, inactivity. They analyze wallets, especially large ones holding Bitcoin that haven't moved coins in many, many years, often since the very early days of Bitcoin.
So wallets that are likely lost, not just HO dealing.
That's the assumption, based on prolonged inactivity and sometimes linking them to known events like the Mt. Gox collapse or individual stories like Thomas's. The general consensus estimate, the figure you hear cited often, is that somewhere around 20 to 25% of the entire long-term holder supply of Bitcoin might be effectively lost or permanently inaccessible.
Wow. Quarter. A quarter of the Bitcoin held by people who intended to hold long-term might just be gone forever.
That's the estimate. It has huge implications for Bitcoin's true liquid supply, its scarcity. And it certainly makes KD's multi-year lockout feel even more precarious. He was potentially on the verge of joining that lost 25%.
The data must also show how people react to these events, right?
Mhm.
Like, do people flee exchanges after a QuadrigaCX?
Oh, absolutely. You can see flows on the blockchain. When there's a major exchange hack or collapse, you often see a surge in Bitcoin moving off exchanges into private wallets, people getting spooked and taking self-custody. But then you hear a story like Stefan Thomas losing his keys, or just the general hassle of self-custody, and the convenience, the potential recovery offered by regulated exchanges like Coinbase starts to look appealing again. People move funds back onto exchanges.
So it's this constant back and forth, a balancing act.
It's a dynamic tension, always searching for that sweet spot between security, convenience, and risk. And stories like KD's just keep reshaping where people perceive that balance to be.
Okay, stepping back from the specifics of KD or Stefan Thomas, what does this whole situation tell us about the bigger picture, about Web3 actually reaching the mainstream?
Well, I think the KD story really throws the biggest hurdle into sharp relief. Despite all the cool stuff happening, DeFi, NFTs, Layer 2 scaling, the fundamental user experience around just securing your assets, managing keys, it's still, frankly, kind of broken for the average person.
It feels like the barrier to entry.
It is the barrier. We can't realistically expect, billions of people to adopt a financial system where forgetting a password, okay, a seed phrase, or losing a little USB stick means potentially losing your life savings permanently. That complexity, that unforgiving nature of private key management, it's the single steepest climb for crypto adoption.
So the industry must know this. Is it driving innovation?
And absolutely. This friction, these horror stories, they create immense pressure to find better ways. The industry has to innovate beyond just telling people be more careful or don't lose your seed phrase. We need systems that offer self-sovereignty without that crushing absolute responsibility falling solely on the individual user.
Okay, so what are some of these solutions? The sources mentioned ideas from Vitalik Buterin, social recovery wallets.
Yeah, social recovery is a really promising concept Vitalik and others have pushed. It's a big shift in thinking. Instead of guarding one single secret, that seed phrase, which is a single point of failure, you use smart contracts to create a different kind of backup.
How does it work? Do you give your keys to friends?
No, not exactly. You designate a set of trusted contacts, maybe friends, family members, even other devices you own as guardians. The key thing is they don't hold your private key. Your wallet is controlled by a smart contract.
Okay.
If you lose access, forget your main password or lose your device, you can initiate a recovery process through the smart contract. To approve the recovery, like resetting access or changing the main key, a certain number of your designated guardians, say 3 out of 5, have to agree. They use their own keys to sign off on your recovery request.
Ah, so it's like a quorum. They collectively vouch for you.
Exactly. It distributes the trust. It moves away from relying on perfect individual memory or security towards leveraging your trusted social network. It makes the Stefan Thomas scenario, one lost piece of paper, total disaster, much less likely.
That sounds genuinely useful. What else is being worked on? MPC.
Right. MPC, multi-party computation. This is a different approach, often used more by institutions right now, but the tech is moving towards retail too. MPC tackles the problem that a private key, if it exists whole in one place, can be stolen or lost.
So how does MPC avoid that?
It uses advanced cryptography so that the complete private key never actually exists in one single location at any time. When the key is created, it's split into multiple pieces or shards. These shards are stored in different places, maybe one on your phone, one on a secure server, maybe one held by a specialized service.
Okay, so it's distributed.
Right. And to do anything like sign a transaction, a certain threshold of these shards needs to be brought together computationally, but without ever fully reconstructing the original key in one spot. So if someone steals your phone, they only get one shard, which is useless by itself. It dramatically reduces the risk of a single point of failure.
That sounds powerful, especially for organizations managing lots of funds.
It is, and it could eventually offer individuals a way to have security that's maybe more robust than just a hardware wallet, but without relying on a single exchange like Coinbase.
Which brings us back to KD's problem. The friction wasn't the tech security, it was the identity verification, the bureaucracy. Are there innovations tackling that side?
Yes, and that's where the longer-term vision of decentralized identity, or DD, comes in. The goal here is to stop users having to prove who they are from scratch, handing over passports and utility bills to every single platform they interact with.
Like separating your identity from the platform itself.
Exactly. Using things like verifiable credentials and cryptographic proofs, you could potentially build a secure, portable digital identity that you control. You could then grant specific platforms temporary access to verify certain claims about you. Yes, I am over 18. Yes, I completed KYC with this trusted issuer, without handing over all the underlying data. Theoretically, this could make those agonizing multi-year recovery battles obsolete because proving your identity wouldn't rely solely on the records held by the one platform you're trying to access.
But yeah, all these cool tech solutions, social recovery, MPC, DID, they still have to operate in the real world, right?
Yeah.
With regulations.
And that is the fundamental tension. Exchanges like Coinbase aren't operating in a vacuum. They're regulated financial entities. They have to comply with strict rules KYC, AML. They must verify user identities rigorously to prevent financial crime.
And that need for rigorous, centralized verification is exactly what creates the friction that locked KD out for so long.
Precisely. The company is caught in the middle. They need the tough checks to satisfy regulators and prevent fraud. That means bureaucracy, delays, friction, but they also need to provide a smooth, easy user experience to attract and keep customers like KD who expect things to just work.
So that conflict regulatory burden versus user expectation, that's the root cause of his lockout situation.
It's right at the heart of it. The hope is that innovations like social recovery and MPC can eventually allow platforms to meet their regulatory duties without relying solely on these slow, painful, centralized verification methods. But we're not quite there yet. The tech needs to mature, get adopted widely. Until then, that difficult trade-off remains for users and platforms alike.
Which brings us back one last time to you, the listener. Thinking about everything we've covered. KD's struggle, the years of waiting, but the eventual recovery through Coinbase. Does that make you lean towards trusting the exchange long-term, or does the risk of that kind of lockout, plus the stories like Stefan Thomas or QuadrigaCX, push you towards taking full control with self-custody despite its own risks.
It really forces you to think about your own skills, your own patience, your own risk tolerance. Tech skills versus tolerance for bureaucracy. There's no single right answer, is there? Just different sets of risks you choose to accept. Hashtag tag outro.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive into the whole crypto custody issue, all sparked by Kevin Durant's story. If we boil down the key takeaways, KD's experience acted as this huge catalyst, right? It took a complex technical problem and made it a mainstream conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen the risks are real on both sides. Centralized custody has this friction risk, these potentially long lockouts. Self-custody has that risk of permanent loss from simple human error, which the data shows is a massive issue, billions lost.
But importantly, this pain is actually driving progress. It's forcing the industry to develop better solutions, things like social recovery, MPC wallets, trying to find that balance between security and actually being usable for normal people.
Right. Which leads us to a final thought, something for you to chew on after this. Considering everything KD's high-profile struggle, the sheer amount of lost crypto, the bureaucratic nightmares people face, do you think stories like this ultimately help crypto adoption in the long run? By highlighting the problems and forcing innovation, or do they mostly just scare potential newcomers away, making digital ownership seem too risky, too difficult?
That's a really critical question for where Web3 goes next. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the Kevin Durant custody story.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.